In this video, we'll go over the best cards in the game, which also have the effect that change their names to another card's name. And at number 10, we have Gaia the Magical Dragon Champion, the newest card on this list. This card has its name treated as Gaia the Dragon Champion while on the field, and in fact is the second fusion monster released who has an effect to change its name to Gaia the Dragon Champion, as the original Gaia Dragon Champion is kind of a mediocre fusion monster that has no effect on it. But it does have a pretty sweet support card called SPYRAL Spear Strike. SPYRAL Spear Strike gives you piercing battle damage when you attack with a Gaia the Fierce Knight monster, and if you inflict piercing battle damage with Gaia the Dragon Champion specifically, you get to go +1, as it allows you to draw 2 cards and then discard 1, which is actually a pretty good effect, which is why the first retrain of Gaia the Dragon Champion can search this card out on its summon. And when they released its new wave of support, they released another searcher for SPYRAL Spear Strike, as well as a whole host of other support for Gaia the Dragon Champion. And what Gaia the Magical Dragon Champion does, in addition to changing his name on the field, is it has 2 effects that it can use once per turn each. One of them allows this card to gain 2800 attack if it destroys a monster by battle, and the other one is a quick effect during the main phase, which allows it to decrease this card's attack by 2600 in order to destroy 1 card on the field. Now, since this card starts off with 2600 attack, it would basically render its attack 0 if it uses effect without any other kind of setup, which wouldn't be very good considering the resources needed to bring this card out. However, if you first attack over something and gain 2600 with the other effect, that would allow you to safely destroy 1 card during your opponent's turn. There's also a special fusion card created for this fusion monster called SPYRAL Fusion, which is basically a polymerization that gives this card an additional 2600 attack when it hits the field, and gives it the lingering effect to attack 2 monsters during each battle phase, which really helps it pull off its effect to gain attack and also draw a whole bunch of cards due to SPYRAL Spear Strike. Now, since this card is so new and untested, I had to put it at the bottom of this list, but it is a pretty strong fusion monster with some pretty decent support, so I had to include it anyway, and it's a good one to start this list off with. And at number 9, we have Blaze Accelerator Reload. This card really opens up all kinds of possibilities for giving support to all kinds of decks by just simply giving them a better card to use that their entire deck revolves around. Because this one card added to the Volcanic archetype single-handedly allowed them to see competitive play when they previously saw none. And I can't think of a time when a single card added to an archetype was able to completely change the deck's viability like Blaze Accelerator Reload did. Because what this card does is its name becomes Try Blaze Accelerator while in the spell and trap card zone. And it also allows you to send a Volcanic card from your hand to the graveyard to draw a card. It also has a graveyard effect where you can banish this card from the graveyard during your main phase of either player's turn in order to send 1 Volcanic card from your deck to the graveyard. Now, Volcanics have 2 monsters who benefit greatly from both of these effects. Volcanic Shell has a graveyard effect to add another copy of itself from your deck to your hand by paying 500 life points. So being able to send 1 to the graveyard from your hand in order to draw a card gives you card advantage. And Volcanic Scattershot has an effect when sent to the graveyard in order to send 2 other copies of itself from your hand or deck to the graveyard as well in order to destroy all of your opponent's monsters. But it can only do this if sent to the graveyard specifically by the effect of a Blaze Accelerator card, which means this little effect was only possible during your turn and by some pretty bad cards at that, as the original Blaze Accelerator was a continuous spell card that had an effect that allowed you to send a Pyro-type monster with 500 or less attack from your hand to the graveyard in order to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. And then it locked you out of attacking for that turn, which is really bad for how not great the original effect is. And it had an upgraded version called Try Blaze Accelerator that could only be activated by sending the original Blaze Accelerator from your field to the graveyard first. And this upgraded version would allow you to send any Pyro-type monster from your hand to the graveyard to destroy a monster, not just one with 500 or less attack from your hand. It also dealt 500 burn damage, but it still stopped you from attacking the turn you use the effect, so it was kind of garbage as well. And the Volcanics were kind of made around these 2 cards, so they obviously didn't see any play because they were just so bad. But Blaze Accelerator Reload has their name, and counts as a Blaze Accelerator card from the graveyard. So you could banish this card during your opponent's turn in order to activate the effect of Volcanic Scattershot to destroy all of your opponent's monsters during their turn. and then inflict 1500 points of burn damage, as Scattershot did 500 burn damage each. And since Volcanics already had a really good searcher in the form of Volcanic Rocket, and a couple of other decent Pyro-type support cards, all they needed was a good Blaze Accelerator card in order to actually be viable. But no one knew that until Blaze Accelerator Reload was given to them randomly one day. It really makes you think, what other archetypes out there that currently see no play could be made so much better if they're just given a card like Blaze Accelerator Reload? And at number 8, we have Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. This card treats its name as Blue Eyes White Dragon while on the field or in the graveyard, so it gains all of that juicy Blue Eyes White Dragon support, which Konami regularly releases every couple of years. And this card has the exact same stats as the original Blue Eyes White Dragon. And what it can do is special summon itself from your hand by revealing a Blue Eyes White Dragon in your hand. And when it's on the field, it can once per turn destroy one of your opponent's monsters, but it can't attack the turn it uses this effect. And this card is so good that it's kind of the center stone for all Blue Eyes decks, because it can be brought out pretty easily from your hand, it can destroy a card on the field, and then it can just be used for combo play since it can't attack that turn anyway. And Blue Eyes decks love to go into rank 8 monsters, which is a rank full of pretty good Xyz monsters. And since its name is treated as Blue Eyes White Dragon, it can also be used occasionally to go into Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon, which is a fusion monster that can be brought out with just 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons on the field without needing to use polymerization. And it also allows you to reuse the effect of Ultimate Creature of Destruction, which can set itself from the graveyard if you summon specifically a Blue Eyes White Dragon. And at number 7, we have Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon. Now, this one kind of has a unique name-changing effect, as it doesn't change its own name, it changes the name of other cards that it steals with its effect, as this is a generic rank 8 monster, but allows you to detach one of its Xyz materials to take control of one of your opponent's face-up monsters. And then that monster you steal has its effect negated, its attack becomes exactly 3000, and then its name is changed to Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon. But if you use this effect, your other monsters can't attack directly this turn except for this card. So there is some downsides to stealing your opponent's cards and then changing its name, but Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon has some really good rank up targets, where you can rank up into Galaxy Eye's Full Armor Photon Dragon to destroy a card on the field, and then rank that up into Galaxy Eye Cipher Blade Dragon to destroy another card. Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon is like the start of a combo chain which allows you to get rid of 3 of your opponent's cards, which is all started with any 2 level 8 monsters. Which is why Blue Eyes decks occasionally see competitive play, because they're able to spam out level 8 monsters easily in order to use things like Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon. And at number 6, we have Avendread Savior. This is a Link 2 monster that just requires 2 zombie-type monsters as its materials, and its name is treated as Revendread Slayer while on the field. Now, this card does see competitive play in zombie decks, but not because of its name-changing effect. That's almost not important at all to why this card is on this list. It has an effect where if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can send a zombie-type monster from your deck to the graveyard in order to make your opponent's monsters lose attack points equal to the level of the monster you sent to the graveyard times 200. And zombie decks love to send their zombies to the graveyard more than anything. So the cost of activating this card's effect is a huge plus to zombie decks. And if you get to attack over something in battle in the process, that's just extra advantage on top of it. It also has an effect for the Avendread archetype that it's part of, where you can add a Avendread card in your graveyard to your hand. Now, as to why this card is treated as Revendread Slayer, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. Revendread Slayer is just a ritual monster who only has 1 support card that specifically lists this card in its name, and that's its ritual spell card, which can be banished from the graveyard to prevent it from being destroyed, which is nice support for it, I guess, but being able to protect the monster with a card in the graveyard is good. It just doesn't seem very necessary for a Link monster to have that, especially one that's generically good for just other zombie decks. And at number 5, we have Ronin Toden. This card's name is treated as Death Frog while on the field, and Death Frog is a level 5 frog monster with 1900 attack, which has an effect to special summon other copies of itself from the hand or deck, based on the number of a very specific card in your graveyard, which technically is counted as a frog monster, kinda. And it has 2 pieces of support that specifically require its name. One of them is a bad fusion monster called D3S Frog, and the other one is a board wipe called Death Croaking, where if you have 3 face-up Death Frogs, you can destroy all of your opponent's cards, which is actually not half bad. Ronin Toden sees lots of play in Frog Paleozoic decks, and is actually a pretty good combo piece in those decks, and it is not at all used because it can change its name to Death Frog on the field. There were some Frog decks in the past that absolutely took advantage of this name-changing effect, with cards like Infernal Reckless Summon, which is a card that can only be activated when you special summon a monster with 1500 or less attack, in which case you can special summon as many monsters from your hand, deck, or graveyard that have the same name as that card. And since Ronin Toden can special summon itself from the graveyard, you'd be able to special summon 3 Death Frogs from your deck with Infernal Reckless Summon, which would be a nice +2 in card advantage, and allowed you to go into rank 5 plays, which was actually pretty good. It's not really used for that today, it's mainly used because it can easily special summon itself from the graveyard, as long as you just banish a frog monster, on an effect that's not once per turn. So it allows you to go into rank 2 monsters, more specifically Totally Awesome. And that's about it. It's a great card, just not for its name-changing effect. And at number 4, we have Cyber Dragon Core. This card's name is treated as Cyber Dragon while on the field or in the graveyard, and is the most used Cyber Dragon card in Cyber Dragon decks, as this card has 3 things going for it. 1, its effect when it's normal summon allows you to add a Cyber Spell or Trap card from your deck to your hand. It has a graveyard effect that allows you to banish it to special summon a Cyber Dragon monster from your deck, if your opponent controls a monster and you control none. And lastly, it is a machine type monster with less than 500 attack, which means you can use machine duplication on this card in order to special summon 2 Cyber Dragons from your deck. This card actually sees play and is used for its name-changing effect, unlike the previous 2 spots on this list, but also has 2 good effects on top of its name-changing one and low attack. Because just like with Ronin Toden and its Infernal Reckless Summon combo, using machine duplication on Cyber Dragon Core will bring out 2 adult Cyber Dragons from your deck, and not 2 other copies of Cyber Dragon Core. So you get 2 level 5 monsters in the field that can be used to go into Cyber Dragon Infinity. Now, Cyber Dragons have a lot of support cards that specifically require Cyber Dragon, so it also fits for that, as well as all of the fusion monsters that require Cyber Dragon. But there are a lot of other Cyber Dragon cards that also change their name to Cyber Dragon, and there's even a couple of other really good low attack monsters that change their name as well to be used with machine duplication. There's a reason Cyber Dragon decks see competitive play, but out of all of them, Cyber Dragon Core is the most played, which is why I put it on this list over all the others. And at number 3, we have Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend. This is a level 8 synchro monster whose name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. And this is also a generic level 8 synchro monster, who has the effect where, once per turn, you can destroy as many special summoned effect monsters in the field that have an attack equal to or less than this card's. Then you get to inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed. And since this card has a starting attack of 3000, there's a good chance you can just destroy all of your opponent's monsters with this effect. And since this card is one of the few ways to just wipe out your opponent's field of monsters with a generic level 8 synchro, this card sees lots of competitive play in decks that can go into level 8 synchro monsters specifically. There's also some cards that specifically require Red Dragon Archfiend on the field or in the graveyard in order to use their effects, and the original Red Dragon Archfiend isn't a super good level 8 synchro monster. So the reason this card has a name-changing effect is basically so you can have a good card to use if you want to use the legacy support that only works with the Red Dragon Archfiend. So if you really want to play Red Dragon Archfiend Assault mode, you don't actually need to play the original Red Dragon Archfiend, and can play something good, like Starlight Red Dragon Archfiend instead. And at number 2, we have Aleister, the Invoker of Madness. This is a Link 2 monster with 2 great arrows and basically generic materials for its summoning, where you just need 2 different monsters with different types and attributes, which means you can use tokens to bring this card out. And this card sees lots of play because it has 2 good Link arrows, and can be brought out pretty easily while just having a high attack at 1800. It also sees play in Alistar The Invoker decks, which are currently seeing a lot of competitive success, as this card changes its name to Alistar The Invoker while on the field or in the graveyard, and Invoker decks are all about using fusion cards that all require Alistar the Invoker as one of its materials. So it can be treated as one of the materials for the fusions the deck revolves around. And it also has an effect that allows you to search out the fusion card when a fusion monster is summoned, by discarding 1 card from your hand. So since this card sees play in non-Invoker decks because it's a good Link 2 monster, it also sees play in its own deck because it does a good job at supporting its own archetype as well. and the name changing effect is actually situationally useful, and not something just kind of tacked on like with Avendread Savior. And out of all the cards on this list, this one takes a high spot for seeing a ton of competitive play, which is only beaten out by I think the first spot on this list. And at number 1, we have SPYRAL Double Helix. This is another card kind of like Blaze Accelerator Reload, where after it was released, the archetype it belonged to instantly became good. In fact, it became so good, it became tier 0. And just to give you a little bit of history to Yu-Gi-Oh!, there is less than 10 tier 0 decks in the history of the game. So that's kind of a big accomplishment. Although, to be fair to SPYRAL decks, they were kind of decent and had some potentially broken cards in them before Double Helix came out. It's just Double Helix was kind of that missing combo piece that allowed them to take advantage of everything else. As what this card does is its name becomes SPYRAL Super Agent while on the field or in the graveyard. And then it has an effect where you can declare one card type between monster, spell, or trap, and then reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. And if you guess correctly, you get to take one SPYRAL monster from your deck or graveyard and either add it to your hand or special summon it to a zone this card points to. So the best use of this card is to special summon a SPYRAL monster directly from your deck, more preferably SPYRAL Master Plan, who could then allow you to go +2 off of her effect, which is half the reason she got banned, which then starts the SPYRAL combo chains that ends in big boards with Trigate Wizard having a negate active. Now, the reason this card's name is treated as SPYRAL Super Agent is because a lot of the SPYRAL cards do that, and a lot of them have effects that specifically only work with SPYRAL Super Agent, either on the field or in the graveyard. And that's about it. It doesn't really need to treat its name as SPYRAL Super Agent. The archetype could have just instead let their support cards work with all SPYRAL monsters, but it was kind of their gimmick to only work on that one specific monster for some reason, which is why they kind of treat some of their other monsters as SPYRAL Super Agent as well. That little gimmick of the SPYRALs is hardly used in SPYRAL decks, as they're more about bringing out a whole bunch of cards in the field in order to go into link plays, and then eventually going into SPYRAL Sleeper, who can destroy 2 of your opponent's cards during their turn, on top of having a big board of link monsters. And since SPYRAL Double Helix can be used as a combo piece for link plays, and special summon SPYRAL monsters directly from the deck, and allowed you to use the effect of a lot of your SPYRAL cards that specifically need SPYRAL Super Agent on the field, it was the perfect combo piece for that deck that they needed in order to become the deck they are today. A deck that still sees competitive play even after half of their cards are placed on the ban list. And also, for a short time, being one of the strongest decks in the game's history, which is why SPYRAL Double Helix kind of has to take the number 1 spot on this list. Alright, and that's the list. I had a lot of fun looking up cards for this list, as there's quite a bit of cards in the game that change their name to something else. If you have any ideas for future videos similar to this one, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments. And fun fact, did you know only 29% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed to the channel? And also, 97% of the audience is male.